So, hello everyone. It's great to see you. This is Rebecca from Seawolf Sustainability Consulting, and I'm really delighted to be joined on the podcast today by Kelly and Karel. So, I'm going to ask them to introduce yourselves. And please, Kelly, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. So, yes, my name is Kelly Christodoulou, and in summary, I would like to describe myself as a global citizen with a need to solve global issues using global finance. I've worked in Australia, excuse me, Australia, Singapore, UK, and Cyprus. In the early 2000s is when I really started my venture into finance and investments. I finished my master's of finance and I left Australia to pursue my dream of working in investment banking in London. It was always a dream of mine as a child, watching Hollywood movies, looking at that exciting life. But after a couple of years, I became quickly disillusioned with the whole investment banking trading floor life. Had a heavy soul, lots of questions, and so I left. And I left to go to back to Australia, to Melbourne, where I started working at a not-for-profit pension fund, and then eventually moving into another not-for-profit pension fund, starting the ESG and sustainability teams, which is really exciting. And I found my soul then. And then today, working with Karel at the Global Advisory Alliance, the GAA, and I also have my own startup blue carbon solution company.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, it sounds a little bit familiar to me as well, that story, and looking forward to hearing more. And
Mm.
Karel, over to you. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rebecca. And my story is a little similar to Kelly's story. I also had a dream. I worked for a number of years in Czech Republic, which is my home country, in marketing and media. I was running a media company in managing director role. And when I reached my 40s, I wanted really experience some change. I wanted to work different industry. I wanted to work global markets, and so I quit and took my wife. We traveled for about a year. We did what is called on LinkedIn a sabbatical year. Then we lived in Sydney, in Australia. We haven't met with Kelly down there. And then we moved over to London. I was quite lucky, I guess, because I started working for International Corporate Governance Network, which is the leading governance membership body, global membership body. And that was the point where I met Kelly, because she was working with Australian Super back then. And through ICGN, I actually learned that in my managing director role, I was actually doing corporate governance without knowing it. And so that was my sort of introduction into responsible investment space. My clients at ICGN, where I was engagement manager, were large asset owners, asset managers, sovereign wealth funds, banks, listed companies. And then I moved over to Share Action, another prominent organization where I conducted a research on responsible investment in private equity, interviewed asset owners across the globe, how they see their private equity investments through the RI lens. And earlier this year, I started my own venture called Global Advisory Alliance, which is basically a infrastructure platform helping individual advisors to collaborate, share opportunities. And along with that, I also started publishing a newsletter called Issuer 2050, which is focusing on publicly listed companies and in general, like future of public markets.
Wow, my goodness, thank you. Well, it's fantastic to have both of you here today and hear from you. And Karel, you've already mentioned a little bit your connection with financial services, but Kelly, I was curious to hear a bit more. You mentioned working in investment banking and that being a bit of a dream. I think the same for me too. That
Yeah.
was one of the things I really wanted to do when I was small.
Mhm.
After visiting London and visiting, it was the London Metals Exchange at the time, at about 16 years old. Um, but yeah, I was just curious, what was your experience in financial services? What were you doing in particular?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be great to hear a bit
Yeah,
more
no,
from you.
absolutely. So, much like you, but my dream came from, I think, Hollywood movies. And so early on in my career, I mean, I started in the early 2000s, working in Canary Wharf, dream come true. Again, on the desk trading floors where we were at. And at first it was fun, right? It's fun, it's
Mm,
exciting, it's energy, you're running around. But then I got to realize my soul, I just wasn't happy, and I didn't know why. Like, why, when I achieved everything, I got my dream, I'm in the job I wanted, why wasn't I happy? And I couldn't work it out. And I kept asking myself this. And then one day, you are both, Rebecca and Karel, going to think I'm mental when I tell you this, but honestly, this truly happened to me. I opened up, these big double wooden doors of this desk trading floor in Canary Wharf at this investment bank. And for a split second, I had an outer body experience. So, just between the three of us, I kind of floated above. It's going to sound weird, but I floated above the trading floor, and I was looking down, and I could see, my colleagues walking around, but then I saw what it actually was. And in my mind, what I saw was like the inside of a clock with, those kind of clogs that are just
mm,
turning tick, tick, tick. And all we were doing there was moving money from one organization to another, tick, to another, tick, to another, tick. And then I kind of came back in my body, and I realized that I'm actually not doing anything impactful. And this is something I needed to do. So quite shortly after that, left London, went to Melbourne, worked on the buy side this time at a pension fund, a not-for-profit one as that, which was great because we were actually having impact. And I could see these retirees who would come into the office who we were actually helping. And that had impact for me because I could see it. And then over time, started up the ESG program at Australian Super, where I ended up back in 2008. So it was the early days, but I knew this is what I had to do. I could see the growth. I knew it was going to be important, and it just fit with my soul.
mm.
And over time, just integrated ESG in all the asset classes, external managers, internal management, where it's material, of course. And now I'm with the GAA with Karel, still doing the same thing, still wanting to have impact in a positive way, still on material focus, and also my own little startup as well. So as of this year, life has been an adventure. It's been great.
Yeah, wow, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And probably we may have passed one another at some point in the early 2000s. That's when I was
We
working Canary Wharf. I started there at the same time.
we
Um,
probably did. Who knows?
yeah, we probably did. And I remember those big heavy doors as well. That's something that's really striking memory.
It
Um,
really is. We probably work at the same place.
could have been, yeah. And I think for me, yeah, I sort of had a similar realization. It wasn't quite so visual or impactful, but I
Mhm.
describe it sometimes as suddenly the numbers that I used to, and it took me a lot longer as well to get there. I think the numbers that I used to work on spreadsheets usually or systems.
Mm.
All of a sudden they had faces and names, and that was around the time of the US subprime crisis. I was in the US at the time, and I was
Yeah.
meeting some customers who had been
Mhm.
foreclosed on, and
Wow.
that was suddenly a huge
Yeah.
realization for me, like, oh, this has like actual real consequences, which sounds so
Mm.
mad to say. And I hadn't really
Yeah.
thought about it,
Yeah.
but all of a sudden, all those numbers in the spreadsheet suddenly had like a real thing and real life and real humans
Yeah.
behind them.
Wow.
So these things can be really impactful.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That's both terrifying and frightening and horrifying and insightful all at the same time.
It was quite emotive, actually. It was
Mm.
really emotional. Yeah,
Yeah.
all
I think
those
so.
emotions, I think,
Exactly.
all of them. And
Yeah.
maybe Kelly, again, a sort of follow-up question for you, and Karel, I'm curious about your thoughts too afterwards. But during your time in financial services and a few different roles and different locations too, um, how did you see it evolve? Did you see many changes in those different organizations or evolution over that time?
Yeah, I can start and then I'll hand it to you,
Please.
Karel. So for me, again, in the early 2000s, in that type of role, it was short term, wasn't it? It was short term focus, profit now, buy low, sell high, all that kind of thing, money, money, money. And there was no consideration of sustainability. And an externality, what does that even mean? None of that language was around. But now we're seeing, you know, 2 decades old later, we're seeing financial institutions embed climate scenarios. We're seeing social metrics come up, and then we're seeing a deep dive on governance, all within investment decision making, which is fantastic. But more recently, we're seeing this anti-ESG movement, stemming from the US, followed by green hushing, and then Trump 2.0, which is, a kind of a step back in the US. But I am hopeful because I was just reading about just the rise of regulations, reporting regulations that are coming out from this part of the world, from the Middle East and from like Asia Pacific. And so regulators are now realizing that companies, they need to disclose on ESG issues. And so I know people always complain about more reporting, and I get it because I used to have to do it. But regulations and reporting, they set the benchmark of which then each year companies try to beat, and especially they want to beat their competitors. And also investors are still using, and they still require ESG metrics. And I think the companies, notwithstanding the US, but I think companies they still continue to embed ESG and sustainability for their longer term resilience, for their operations, for their supply chain, for funding for sure, because investors are still looking at it, and to attract talent. That's what I see. Karel, I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, I don't have such a long exposure and experience to investment industry, so maybe I can reflect on the last 7 years of what I've witnessed. But I'd like to think that there were things which has changed during my time within, let's say, responsible investment industry space. So definitely stewardship. The rise of stewardship. Stewardship became a profession. When I joined ICGN, back in 2019, it was like very little of resources, and now various courses are available and books, and I've witnessed a lot of hiring into stewardship roles. So stewardship became a profession. I think that's one of the observation. ESG sustainability definitely moved into board agenda of listed and private companies. That's also another thing which I witnessed over the course of 7 years. Just something that boards can't ignore anymore. But in a same time, and for me, this research on responsible investment activities in private equity as an asset class was really a huge eye opener, which also confirmed my suspicion that a lot of ESG activities are driven by marketing, basically, and still, there is this disconnection between investments and sort of societal needs. I would say, and in private equity, it was sort of crystal clear when you've seen how private equity firms invest in healthcare sector, in retirement houses, all those sort of sensitive, I would say, socially sensitive industries. So there is a huge disconnection still, and still there is this very sort of short-term focus, I would say. So that was my observation.
Yeah, thank you. And I think one more follow-up, perhaps for you, Kelly, on sort of takeaways from working in finance. And I'm very curious to hear about what both of you are doing now and looking more forward. But yeah, that follow-up, just you've mentioned perhaps some of it, but looking back at when you were working inside some of those financial organizations directly, do you have takeaways? So sort of good or bad from that experience? You've mentioned a few of them.
Yeah, actually, I have some great takeaways. I want to talk to you about an experience I had being a woman in that industry. But just to come back to your original question about takeaways, I guess the biggest takeaway for me is that investments and finance are powerful, and it's not neutral. Every single investment and finance decision that we all make, whether in corporations or investment banks or pension funds, every single investment decision has an impact, whether it's on the environment, on society, or on the economy as a whole. And we really need to be more aware of that and act accordingly. The good news is, we are seeing some leaders actually take that on and know this. But also on the bad side is the realization that there's still a number of actors out there that are pushing back on this. They're out there. I'm sure you could see it in the news. They're really pushing back. So from my perspective, the big takeaway through all my years of working is that you have to have a bold vision, but you have to be pragmatic if you want to have positive impact. And then just the second takeaway I've discovered or know that works is everything needs to be, when we speak about ESG or sustainability or impact, it has to be brought back to their language. Those naysayers, it has to be brought back on how whatever this line item is will impact, either financial returns or have a financial cost in order to gain traction. And that's the key takeaways from my 2-decade-old experience.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you're spot on around that sort of not being neutral. And I think something I also observe is, I think with all of us as consumers, we make different choices every day, and sometimes more ethical, sometimes not, sometimes all sorts of things drive our decision making. I find it quite interesting because when it comes to selecting what bank to use or maybe what other financial services provider, often that's almost seen as, oh well, there's not much I can really do about that. It's this thing that's just, yeah, I'll just use it and it's a service. Even though probably you're interacting with banks, financial services in one way or another every single day, if not more, multiple times a day. And so I find it really intriguing, this sort of sometimes perception, even from a consumer, of a sort of neutral player. And I don't think that's really true.
No, it's not. And And you're absolutely right. We don't realize that we all have the power. Every single decision making, whether you buy something from the shop or you buy a data center, every single action that we take has impact. It's not neutral, and I think we need to, if we can, be more aware of it and act accordingly.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's about awareness and that transparency piece. You mentioned the reporting earlier. I think that helps as well.
Yes.
Before we move on, I was just curious to pick on. You mentioned you might have a question for me about
Oh,
being a female in financial services. I was just curious. So I was like, I wonder what that is.
yeah. So, I mean, I just thought of it because I just had a flashback when we were talking about, big doors and everything. One of the, you asked the question about what has changed over time, and I remember being at, these big organizations in Canary Wharf on the desk trading floors, fun, exciting, pretty much 85 to 90% male. And I just remember some of the behaviors that were tolerated or actually did then would not be accepted today. In fact, I'm sure they'd be criminal. I remember, just awful behaviors about, So one instance I was aware of, and it still haunts me now because I can see it, is, working at my desk. And then, my colleague kind of over the other side at someone's desk, 2 or 3 desks down, on the trading floor desk, sort of sniggering. And I remember just kind of leaning back and then just having a look, and they were looking at porn. And then you just kind of had to, like, I remember just kind of turning back and pretending I didn't see it and just kept on working, but it still impacts me today. But back then, 20, 25 years ago, it was fine. They did it. So that's a real positive in terms of change. You asked that change question, and I think that's one of the positive things.
Yeah. Sorry, please.
No, I just wanted to reflect on what Kelly was talking about. The proportion between male and female. And I remember when I when I joined ICGN in 2019, it was very much like female-led organization. In the leadership, there were female CEO was a female, and when I started interacting with all those pension funds and asset management companies, what surprised me was that actually majority of my partners for discussion were females. Those who were like Kelly, leading the ESG efforts, those who were in the stewardship teams, and I think what might be an additional kind of angle how to look at this was we had a meeting with fellow advisors at the GAA recently, and one of the advisors who is based in the US, and he's kind of finishing his PhD right now. He said that it was very interesting. He said that this adoption of ESG ideas is actually higher in countries, I don't know, like Malaysia or in the East, where the family values are kind of like much higher than in Western society, which is probably more like individualist type of driven society. And it kind of resonated with me because I understood that when society has those family values at the forefront, they probably also care more about sustainability and sort of future looking, activities. So I also see that female probably represent this view on things, just different perspective, I guess. And so I think it's definitely good to see more, females within the investment industry, because, according to my opinion, they are just bringing different angle how to think about things, how to assess risks and opportunities, to just see the world differently. And I think we need this dialogue between females.
Yeah, for sure. And I think sort of tying together a little bit those two comments and what I've seen in terms of evolution, I definitely recognize some of what you're saying, Kelly. I think turning the clock back 25 years, it's quite a long time now. I am that old. It feels like it's flown by, to be honest. But yeah, turning the clock back 25 years, this would be more in a social setting, go out for drinks in Canary Wharf and that sort of thing. I was remembering recently we were talking socially about a similar topic. That there was a strip club nearby, and so very often there were conversations along the lines of talking about sort of some of those topics, and yeah, quite full on conversations. And I was thinking, gosh, I just don't know. I don't think that would happen these days. I think hopefully in terms of evolution, that's that's sort of left behind, because it
Yeah.
was quite uncomfortable. Now I look
Yeah,
back and now I think about it.
it's like icky, isn't it? It's like, ugh.
Yeah. And it would
It's, you
get
just
quite
have a
personal.
feeling. It is,
Mm.
but I remember them talking about that same strip club at Canary Wharf. Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah,
exactly. So I think it's all changed now, right? Which is a positive thing in terms of culture.
exactly. And then
Yeah.
Karel, with what you mentioned, I think I then probably as I progressed in my own career, I sometimes would have the sort of assumption when I was in a room that I was the person there to do the minutes, or oh, you're
Yeah.
the note taker, or you're the one doing
Yes.
the presentation, doing the
Yes.
slides. There was almost like an implied assumption there, because very often I might be the only female in the room, or sort of walking into
Mm.
a meeting and it's like, oh, there's no one else with you. Yeah, I'm doing the meeting on my own.
Yeah,
I'm not.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and again, no judgment, but it was just interesting that there were a lot of um, assumptions about the different roles and who might be doing those different roles,
Mhm.
which I found quite
That's true.
interesting. And I think even that's probably evolved a little bit. But to what you
Mm.
mentioned, Carol, what I do mention working on ESG and more broadly in sustainability, you just, or in my experience at least, I've just found there's a lot more different types of people, not just gender, just all different types of people. And maybe it's just the groups and organizations I've been involved in, but it just tends to be many, many more different perspectives and different things that people bring, different motivations, whether it's inside financial services or outside. And that's something that I just love about working in these
Mm.
topics. There's
Yeah,
a lot of
totally.
variety, which is great.
Totally, yeah.
And then sort of moving on and thinking about what you're both doing now, and a bit more forward looking. So maybe starting with you, Kelly, and you've already touched on it. It'd be great to hear a bit more about what you're doing now, and then also if any of those learnings from financial services help you with what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rebecca. So, definitely the first thing that I'm working on is with the GAA with Karel, and that's been really interesting. And I like it because it's like the Airbnb for consultants. And I've met a couple of the other advisory members who've recently joined in, and everyone's really smart and really nice. So I'm looking forward to working more and more with them as the GAA grows. But the other part that I'm involved in is a startup called Tide MRV,
Mhm.
and it is a woman-founded, me, climate tech venture focusing on mangrove blue carbon restoration and blue carbon credits. So in order to have a project with a green carbon or blue carbon sort of up on a registry like Vera or Gold Standards, they have to go through a process called monitoring, reporting, and verification. And every project needs to do that, and fair enough, because buyers need to be certain that those carbon credits are there. But it's hard for small landowners because the monitoring, reporting, and verification to get their own mangrove project or tree project off the ground is often costly. It's time consuming. It's maybe in a language that may not be their first language. And it may be at an education and tech level that these traditional landowners do not have. So there's many barriers to prevent community-led mangrove project. So I'm working on an AI solution with some tech partners in order to unblock that. So we can get more landowners to replant more mangroves so that we can, as a carbon sink, but also as a climate adaptation for where they are. So if you think of mangroves, they mainly grow equatorish, a lot around Southeast Asia, where I grew up. So I grew up with mangroves. I grew up in Singapore and the Philippines, and having images of playing with mud crabs and climbing through them as a tomboy. But as I go back, they're gone, and so it's sad. So I really want to help specifically Southeast Asian countries, if I can, and to plant more mangroves and release carbon finance for these landowners.
Wow,
So that's me
fantastic.
in a complete nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. That sounds super interesting. And I think mangroves, if I'm not wrong, they're also a really important place for very small fish, baby fish. I'm
Yes.
sure there's a scientific
Yes.
name for that. So it's
Baby fish.
yeah, exactly. Carbon sink, but then also sort of a fisheries impact, community impact, many things.
Absolutely. And one of the things that, I particularly want to do is to train. So these are all in coastal communities, and I want to train women in these coastal communities to be sort of digital monitors, so they will be paid as another source of income for them. And then sort of they progress into sort of leadership roles within our organization. And that's really important to me as well.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Karel, same question to you. So what are you doing now? Maybe a bit more about GAA as well. It'd be great to hear some more.
Yeah, I think the initial idea for the GAA was literally to give people I admire, like Kelly, some additional tools so they can achieve more of what they do with a sort of help of GAA. The idea basically sparked from my thinking that when people like Kelly have a big organization behind her back, she can achieve so many things because her impact is just multiplied by the power of the organization itself. And once people like Kelly go solo, they are missing this this support, I would call it. And so with that in my mind, I wanted to build something which will replace a large organization, which is usually tidying up people to some sort of internal politics and rules, and so they can't really do what they want to do. And so Global Advisory Alliance is basically a how to describe it. I'd like to describe it as an infrastructure tool which is providing a brand, providing a new business development activities, is providing a referral flow, is helping individual advisors to be more visible, to have bigger impact, because we can take what they do and share it across the industry, and basically the main kind of tool here are advisors itself, because they can team up with other advisors on a platform. They can lead bigger projects, and so that's what I'm trying to build. It's really at the beginning. We started this project earlier this year in May, and we are onboarding new advisors, and we are hoping to have 50 founding, as we call founding advisors, by the end of this year, because at that point, I guess we will have the nice group of expertise line up, and we can really help those who are part of the network, but also we can start helping potential customers of Alliance, who are investors, companies, and other organizations.
Yeah, thank you. And I certainly get the need. And I think for me, when I started off consulting, advising, and I was on my own, moving from a very large organization, it was it's a bit of a shock, to be honest. And particularly just small things. Sometimes it could be, I think there was a problem with my Microsoft account at some point. I couldn't log into Teams or something like this. And you think, oh, it's okay. I'll just raise an IT ticket and get someone to, oh, no, there's no one.
I'm the IT. I am the
Exactly.
IT now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny when that happens. Yeah. No, I agree. You become so reliant on big organizations, but when you start off to yourself, as you said, everything is just on you. Like, the three of us, we've all started our own things, and everything is just on us, and it's a lot.
Yeah, and even just
So
having people to talk to or hear from, it helps to have that
yeah.
infrastructure. I think I interrupted you, so please go ahead. Kelly, I'm not sure if you're going to
Oh,
say something more.
oh no, I wasn't. I was just laughing. Sorry, because I
Okay.
agree. Yeah.
But yeah, so I can definitely, I can definitely get that, having that infrastructure. I think it
Mhm.
really helps. And yeah, hopefully some sort of good connections and complementary skills and talking to different people as part of the GAA too. And maybe then a sort of follow-up question on that, with what each of you are doing now. How do those learnings from your experience in finance help? And I think reflecting on my own experience, I do find, well, firstly, just knowing my way around a spreadsheet, around the bookkeeping and accounting, sort of knowing about different policies or sometimes those things that big organizations have. I've found that's been really useful, and it was not necessarily my day job back when I was in financial services, but I'm just aware of all those different things, know how to navigate my way around, and also working with different organizations. Have a pretty good feeling of the different departments, roles, responsibilities, and that kind of thing. So I think it's been a really good foundation to then do something different outside. But Kelly, I was curious about yourself. Have you found there are some of those learnings from your experience in finance which you use today, perhaps with Tide?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think two things. Materiality,
Mm,
only focus on what actually determines risk and return. And those are both financial and non-financial metrics. And when I do speak to people about Tide MRB, it's all about it's about returns, isn't it? It's about how we can help you. And I think that's the learnings I've taken on materiality and always speaking the language of finance to everyone, because that's, whether we like it or not, as we said, investment and finance, each decision creates impact. So you have to learn the language, constantly speak the language in order to have impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And Karel, same question to you with your interactions with finance, and you mentioned some of the organizations you were working with before. Has some of that helped with what you're doing today with GAA?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And I think, the biggest help, for what I'm doing right now are basically the relationships I've built, in previous years while working for ICG and Share Action. And I think this is, not a message for, people in I would say of our age, but maybe for younger generation, if your audience is also sort of younger. I think the biggest message I have is that relationships are assets. It's something you should start building from early age as a young professional. And but also I'd like to reflect on something which for me was kind of an eye-opening moment, working within investment society. And maybe just my view, because I entered this space quite late in terms of my own age, so I haven't studied with some folks and haven't worked with them for many years. But I did find a lot of relationships very transactional, and I think it's a shame. I think we doesn't have to just maintain relationship on this transactional level when we need something and someone needs something from us. I think we can definitely go beyond that and maybe just talk to people informally, and even at least what I've tried to reach out to many people after I I stopped working for some organization, just to reconnect and say hello and check on them, how they are doing, because I like them, for instance, right? And so yeah, I think to wrap up this this part of my thinking about like what I've learned, yeah, definitely, relationships are important for your career, for future career, for your future career, if you want to be entrepreneur, or if you want to grow within the organization where you work.
Yeah, for sure. And it's very human too. I've been thinking quite a lot about technology and AI and using it recently. And one thing I've been reflecting on is it's really hard to, well, some people are, of course, but it's quite hard to build a relationship with sort of a chat bot. But it's just a different thing as opposed to two humans together talking in whatever context. So yeah, absolutely agree with you on that. And then final question for each of you was, we've had such amazing experience and careers, and thank you so much for all of the insights. If you could go back and give your former self some advice, if you roll back to that early part of your career, what would you say? And maybe Kelly, starting with you.
That's so fascinating. I'd probably say be more assertive. Don't,
Really?
yeah, be more. That's what I wish I said to myself younger.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sure.
And a good one, a very good one. And And yeah, I'm sort of, it's funny because very often I was told I was a little bit too assertive. So quite often I was given the opposite advice. I don't know.
Well, that was it, right? If you were any more assertive, you were kind of
Yeah,
no. If you wanted to stay in your role or if you spoke out, then you. But
exactly.
times have changed, hopefully. So, but yeah, that I wish I just was more assertive and I was just a bit more stronger and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
thank
it.
you for sharing. I think actually I was thinking for me, I think probably I'd say just be yourself. Like really be yourself. I think that
Yeah,
would be my only
yeah.
advice to myself. But Karel,
Yes.
same question to you. If you could go back and give yourself advice, almost self-advice, what would it be?
Oh, it's just so difficult. Maybe I would say, I don't know, just start earlier. That would probably be the advice. But then, it's difficult to, to actually take this as advice to my younger self. And the reason is that you never know. I think if you start later, you're also bringing some sort of experience on board, and so you are different person, and it means that the value you bring in is different. When you start younger, you maybe bring more energy or something like that, but if you start later, you can bring more experience and more of what you said, Rebecca, like this human um, um, part of yourself, which I think is important, especially in these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you both so much. Really appreciate all of the fantastic comments and hearing from you both today. Just finally, if you have any closing words, and maybe, and if not, no worries. But maybe Kelly, initially to you, any final thoughts before we part?
I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much for this. It's been really informative and it's been fun. And thank you to Karel for inviting me to participate with you on this panel. I appreciate you both. Thank you so much.
Back at you, and Karel, same to you.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to add one thing, and I'm super excited about you, Rebecca, running such a channel, like independent channel, because what I see in these days from sort of social media, how they changed, how are driven by algorithms which are giving a boost certain type of posts or ideas, which typically is sort of like clickbait type of content, not very deep thought. And I think that there is a huge need for independent channels, for podcasts like this, where you can invite various people to talk about their experiences on say time scale of 50 minutes. And I think it's great because otherwise we are just slaves of those social media channels, which actually deciding on our behalf what we will see and what we won't see. So an independent channel like this one is super important, and thanks for having us both here today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree. It's again all different perspectives, whoever it may be, just hearing different voices, different thoughts, different perspectives is, I think, very valuable. Well, thank you. So we'll close off there and have a good day, everyone.